Pepper spray, check. Taser, check. Girlfriend repellent, check. Oh, hey y'all. Sorry. Just trying to arm up here. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but fucking Ghostface is back. Oh, fuck. What's going on, y'all? Foos here. Today, we are going to talk about Scream 5. Not Scream 2022, it's fucking Scream 5. Before we do that, though, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. That way you can stay up to date on the channel. We got a lot more stuff in the can for Scream, as well as a whole mess of other shit as far as horror content goes. Plus, we want to keep the vocal covers dropped in there as well. But so definitely hit subscribe, stay up to date on all that shit, help the channel out. Much appreciated. Well, let's go ahead and dive into Scream 5 here. So this one came out in January 14th, 2022. This was written by James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick and directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. This would be our first Scream movie to have nothing, affiliated with Wes Craven in this one. The movie would pay a couple little homages to Wes, which I thought were kind of cool. You get a character by the name of Wes who, once he's killed, there's a little, memorial party that they have for him in there, as well as a little for Wes that we get in the credits that, I thought was kind of cool. So they kind of tip their hat to Wes in some way there. We get major returning cast that we're used to in this one with Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott, Courtney Cox, as Gale Weathers, and David Arquette as Dewey. We also get Roger Jackson back as Ghostface. New cast including Melissa Barrera as Samantha Carpenter, Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter, her sister. We get Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown as Chad and Mindy Meeks, respectively. They're the niece and nephew of Randy. We also get a few other new ones in this as well. There's a decent round of new characters in this movie. Takes place 11 years after Sidney's cousin Jill and her friend Charlie Walker has went on their Ghostface killing spree. This time Ghostface comes back to Woodsboro, but attacking, or targeting, I should say, someone different. It's the Carpenter sisters, in particular Samantha Carpenter. Ghostface happens to know that Samantha is the descendant of Billy Loomis. It happens to be her daughter, her dad, I should say. And she's definitely got some trauma that we learn about throughout this movie, with learning that is her true father. She has some visions of her dad and some temptations of violence that we kind of explore throughout the movie. But ultimately, our OG cast is kind of called into action to help this newer generation battle Ghostface once again. So that's where we're kind of at on this one. So we'll jump right into positives, and we'll go from there. All right, first things first on the positives for me on this one. I'm going to point out the opening scene, which for me, I'm just going to say off the bat, is my favorite opening scene since the first movie. Doesn't top the first movie, but it is definitely my second favorite of the Scream franchise at this point. A lot of things that I like about this scene. First and foremost, I'll say Jenna Ortega, I feel like, is fantastic in this movie. She does great in horror movies, I feel like. She does a really good job in this one, in the opening scene, as well as in the hospital scene, of just conveying the pain and the terror of the attack. So I really enjoy her performance in it. Also, just feel like Roger Jackson is firing on all cylinders on this one. Once he triggers the Ghostface on this call, he's just top notch. It's the first Ghostface call in 11 years for this man, and he is not pulling punches. Brutal Ghostface attack on this one as well. I feel like that's another thing that I take away from this one. Couple points that stand out: the knife stab through the hand, which in a way, I guess, is a callback sort of to 4 with Olivia's attack, because that happens to her in that one as well. But there's just something about that that's just cringeworthy when you watch it. And him stomping her leg on the floor, just particularly vicious. It's just a very aggressive Ghostface attack, I feel like. And so everything about this opening scene I'm definitely a fan of. We get a cool little moment where before Tara, or Ghostface, is kind of triggered on this call, Tara's sitting there and she's playing with the knives and the knife block. Kind of a little bit of a callback to Casey Becker, I think, there. So overall, opening scene I'm a big fan of. One thing I will point out, I'll come back to maybe a little bit on the end here, but I'll mention that Tara has asthma, and I'll just leave it at that here before we move on. I'll come back to that. Moving on to the next positive for now, though. Just the newer characters, in particular the core 4. I'm a fan of the the whole group there, whether it's Chad, Mindy, Sam, Tara. I enjoy all of them in various ways throughout 5 or 6. Kind of that relationship tends to grow more through 6, so I'm probably looking at that through that lens a little bit here. But the seeds had to be planted here in 5, so I will say I enjoy that group of characters. The core 4 is something about 5 and 6 that I do consider a positive. Another positive I will point to in 5, this is my favorite version of Dewey that we get in any of the Scream movies, which makes it sad that this is the one where we see him die, but I just enjoy this phase of Dewey. I guess he's gone through so much with Gale and their relationship. He's turned to the bottle. He's become, started drinking. He's been asked to retire from the police force. He's still got Tatum, who is something that I'm sure he deals with on a daily basis. And all that eventually, for any human being, the weight of the world will get to you sooner or later. And it seems like it kind of has to him in this movie. And I just enjoy something about that boyish charm has been stolen from him. And he's just kind of this grizzled, bitter man now. And the way he portrays that role, I really enjoy Dewey in this one a lot. When he dies, it's significant for sure. It's definitely a death that feels like it has gravity to it when it happens in the movie. Gale's reaction to it adds to that as well. And there's something particularly messed up about the fact that you can kind of say Gale calling Dewey is kind of what leads to his downfall. As he's sitting there about to shoot Ghostface and the phone rings, he looks down and gets stabbed. So there's something to that as well. But everything about Dewey in this one I thoroughly enjoy. Moving on to my next positive, I'll point out that Judy Hicks's call and attack is something I enjoy a lot about this movie. I don't know if it's the fact that Ghostface isn't particularly threatening her in this call as much as he is her son. And anybody that has kids is going to tell you something about the idea of feeling helpless when your kid is in danger is a feeling that you never want to experience. So that adds to this for me. So just the panic nature of the call, that extra level of stress of it being her child, the whole thing I really enjoy. And then when she gets to the house, and is attacked there, the surprise of Ghostface popping out at her at the front steps, love everything about that. The idea of her just being stabbed right there on the front steps in the middle of broad daylight in suburbia has a certain level of uncomfortableness to it. So yeah, everything about Judy Hicks's call and attack and everything that goes in there, I really enjoy about this movie. Definitely one of my favorite parts. Last thing I'll point out on the positives is the score for this one by Brian Tyler. I really enjoy the score of this movie, and that's not saying I didn't enjoy the score of every Scream movie. They've all been great, but there's something about this one that stuck out to me even a little more so than some of the rest, to be honest, particularly during the attack scenes and some of that. Just there's something about the score in this one that hits to me personally, so I'll shout that out as a positive as well. That's all I really got on the positives here, though, so I'm going to jump over to the negative stuff here, and we'll get all the bad stuff out of the way. All right, so for the negatives, I'm going to start off with the biggest negative that I have for the whole movie right off the bat, and that is Gale's usage in this movie. And I'm not even going to point out Sidney's usage as much because I kind of considered that one to be an afterthought anyway. Going into this one, we kind of knew we were transitioning more towards Sam is the target and all of that. So, but Gale, I kind of expected to still be involved more, trying to help Sam than she was. And her usage is basically just she shows up after an attack. She has a little spat with Dewey. Well, I guess I should backtrack a little bit. We see her on Dewey's TV early on in the movie, and she makes a fun little joke about, never wanting to bring her bangs back and all that. And, so that's kind of funny. But that's a minor little one-off, little ha-ha moment they throw in there. Then we get her when she shows up at the crime scene, and her and Dewey have their little interaction. Lasts for a couple minutes. That's it for her for now. We see her come up after Dewey is murdered, where she shows up at the hospital, and she has her dramatic reaction to seeing Dewey for the first time. And then from that point, we see a small interaction in the hospital with her and Sam, and then with her and Sidney. And then from there, it's basically her showing up at Stu Macher's house, getting shot, disappearing for a while, and all of that up to this point, I would be fine with that being the only involvement if the last detail that I'm going to point out wasn't the case. We get a situation towards the end where Gale is back involved, and she's having this back and forth with Amber's character, and obviously Amber is antagonizing her about the the Dewey situation, talking about how she killed him and how he died and all of this, and she's clearly trying to get under Gale's skin. And it comes time to where it's time to take the kill shot on Amber, and Sidney gives this one to Gale. She says that this one's yours, basically, you know? So Gale shoots and what we think at the time is kills Amber. And if that would have been it, and we would have left that be, I could have lived with every other aspect of her involvement and been like, you know what, she got that great moment at the end where she got her payback and she got to shoot that bitch for what she did to Dewey. I'm good with it. But that doesn't stick. We have to have the moment at the end where even after we've had Richie's whole little massacre, basically, and he's shot, slit throat, all the things that you could do, instead of just letting it lay there and having our resolve come from that moment to the end of the movie, we had to have the one last moment where Amber gets back up and she walks in with the knife all Freddy Krueger burnt up and everything, just so we can get the awful moment where Tara has to get the kill shot with the "I still prefer the Babadook" line, which that whole thing just downright kind of pissed me off, not gonna lie. And I'm not a Gale supporter. I have never been a big Gale fan, and I've said that on almost every Scream review I've done so far. Not one of my top favorite characters, but you still gotta respect the character and what it brings, and that was a moment where that character earned and deserved the right to be the one to kill that bitch. Being the one that killed Dewey, having all of those moments where she points out how she killed Dewey, and they're building to what should clearly be a moment where Gale's character gets that final nail in the coffin, and we pull that rug out from under it. And that just didn't sit right with me at all. It's by far my biggest negative of this. And again, coming from a not Gale fan. Again, you know, it is what it is. But I'll move on to my next negative here with this one, which is, I'll call it suspension of disbelief moments. And two little things that I'll point out about that kind of coincide with it. And one of them, it goes to something that I do enjoy, which is the Judy attack scene, like I talked about in my positives. But going tit for tat with that, I will say there is something kind of hard to believe about two aspects of that, where Judy is flying home and she calls in on her radio for units to converge on her house. Now, I don't know a ton about the police officers and everything like that in most towns, but I feel like in most towns in America, if the sheriff of a town comes over the radio and tells all units to converge on her house, some cops are going to show up pretty quick to the sheriff's house. So there being no one there by the time she arrives, or even close after the time she gets there, as Ghostface is stabbing her on the front sidewalk, is a little tough to believe. And then we get this whole situation with the hospital, where this movie came out post-COVID, so that even adds to this. The whole idea of having an entire floor in a hospital shut down and quarantined off for one person, kind of absurd to imagine actually happening in today's day and age. So as you're watching Scream 5 unfold, you kind of have to really tell yourself, I'm watching a movie here, you know, and that's fine. I mean, because you are watching a movie, so I'm not trying to be overly critical about that. But those are a couple of moments where I think it kind of goes maybe a little far with the whole insulting your intelligence about how things would actually unfold. But I mean, it's a minor grievance in the grand scheme of things. Final negative I'll point out on this one is just kind of the disrespect a little bit that is shown in some moments in this movie towards Sidney Prescott's character. And I'm a big Sidney fan, so maybe I'm just being biased here, but I feel like Sam's character is particularly dismissive and borderline disrespectful of her up until the point where Sidney shows up to basically help save her ass, and then all of a sudden her tone changes. I mean, even to the point where it's inserted in dialogue where Gale even tells Sam to, to watch her tone, new girl. I don't know why we purposely felt the need to make Sam seem like she was above or better or dismissive in any way towards Sidney. I felt like that wasn't really a necessary way that we could have played this. Not big a fan of that whole thing. But outside of that, I would say that's pretty much it I got on the negatives. I'll say one other thing, actually, on negatives. The killers on this one, post-reveal. There's some things I don't mind, but overall, I feel like Richie and Amber become a little insufferable, and I think that's kind of what they're going for, so maybe I shouldn't put this as a negative. Maybe they accomplished the point. But my goodness, out of all the Ghostface killers and listening to their rambling as to why they're doing it and what their motive is, these were probably the two that the most I kind of found myself going, oh my God, as I'm listening to it. And Amber definitely trying to do the Stu Macher thing, maybe a little too much, but outside of that, again, minor criticism in the grand scheme of things. That's really all I got on the negatives. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this one up with some final thoughts and get out of here. All right, so final thoughts I got on this one. I know I mentioned earlier in the whole Tara asthma thing. We'll come back to that one here now. So one thing I'm going to point out about this, perhaps this should have been in negatives the more I'm thinking about it. We see in this movie that Tara obviously has asthma. And then I don't know of anybody that's had asthma that I can think of that could be attacked as many times as she is throughout this movie and put into these panicked situations that would not have had an asthma attack. So I don't really know why that was put into the movie for any other reason for then it to be a writing mechanism for them to get a reason for them to end up back at Amber's house. So maybe I should have put that in negatives now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, just wanted to point that out. So I'll also point out a couple of the Richie clues in hindsight here. When they're driving in the car early on, Sam and Richie, there's a moment where Tara, or Sam I should say, is being asked, why would anybody want to attack your sister? And she's kind of playing dumb because she obviously doesn't want to tell Richie the whole thing about Billy Loomis being her dad at this point. So she kind of just says no, and then kind of turns and looks off out the window. But as she looks out the window, you see Richie over here behind her, and he's just looking at her like, yeah, right, bitch. You know damn well why somebody would want to attack your sister. So kind of find that funny when you know he's the killer. All those little things stick out way more, I feel like. Another one is when they first meet Dewey. He has a similar kind of moment there where Dewey opens the door, and the first time that Richie sees him, you see him standing behind Sam, so he's not worried about hiding his facial expression from her, and he's just kind of starstruck looking at Dewey. He has this sort of face going on. So I feel like that kind of is a big telling point as well. It's like, all right, yeah, you're not a Stab fan, but yet you see Dewey opening the door, and it looks like you've just seen, your biggest hero you've ever, could have possibly met. Also, he gets way too invested in these Stab movies too fast for somebody that's claiming to just be doing research. As we're watching him start to watch these movies, almost every time they show him in the hospital or in the hotel with some downtime, he's watching either these movies or some YouTube rabbit hole about these movies. So that is a little telling, I would say. If you're going to do research to learn something about this, I don't think you'd go as hard as he was going here. So a couple little funny things just there about Richie looking back in hindsight. And my last final thought I'll point out about this one, just kind of a little minor thing for me. I'm a big fan of the band He Is Legend, and somebody involved with this movie thought it appropriate to put a He Is Legend band poster in the set of the bar that they're in earlier on in the movie when the kids are all in there talking. And whoever it was that came up with that idea, good credit to you there. But that's all I got for this one. I debated kind of heavily between whether or not this one was 3.5 or 4 stars for me. I'm feeling generous today, so it's going to be 4 stars today. And yeah, looking forward to going into the rest of this one with Scream 6 and kind of wrapping up where we're at so far with Scream, wrapping up the Carpenter era Scream movies, Radio Silence era Scream movies, whatever we want to call it. And I'm actually legitimately looking forward to talking about 6. It's one of those movies that I've got a love-hate relationship with it, and we'll get into obviously when we talk about it. But I am not one of the fans because I would consider myself obviously a massive Sidney Prescott fan, and I'm a big fan of the original trilogy and also 4 as well. But I'm not one of these fans that seems to want to be divided like everyone I'm seeing now about Scream, where you either like 5 and 6 and you don't want to watch the rest of them, or it's vice versa. I really don't understand that philosophy. I'm a fan of if it's a good movie, it's a good movie, and I can like Sam as a character and also be a massive Sidney fan. That doesn't have to cancel each other out somehow. Just my little rant for the internet today. But yeah, that's all I got on Scream 5. Looking forward to Scream 6, and then a couple other ideas for Scream stuff in mind for a few other videos after that. And then from there, it looks like we're going to jump into the Halloween franchise from there. So, oh boy, it's going to be interesting. Opening a can of worms I'm not really sure I'm ready for. But that's all I got for this one. Thank you guys for checking it out. If you haven't already checked out the other reviews for 1 through 4, please go ahead and check those out as well. Like, comment, subscribe, do anything you can to help the channel. I greatly appreciate it. If you've got any other constructive criticism for the channel, by all means, send it my way. I'm just learning this stuff out, so I'll take whatever you got. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.